Glory to God. Hello again, everyone. Good to be back with you. Some of you are waiting for uh, Believe the Gospel, My Ours, Part 6. That is coming up soon. A few more days, it'll be out there. But something else was laid on my heart recently, which was the parable of the sheep and the goats, famous Matthew 25, verses 31 to 46 parable. Many of us are familiar with. And it actually has so much to say about the current arguments we're having out here between free grace and works salvation. I'm a little surprised at myself that I haven't actually taught on this before. I haven't really mentioned it, I haven't used this passage. And I know the Lord quickened my spirit to it. And I guess it has something to do also with the series that I'm doing, Believe the Gospel, My Arse, because the word belief is conspicuously absent in that famous parable about the sheep and the goats, Matthew 25, verses 31 to 46, which we're going to go through quickly. But some of you are wondering why I have pictures of the pod swimming in the lake of fire. Yes, the pod. Some of you are not even familiar who they are, although those of you who watch this channel and are familiar with the community that I deal with here, the community of Greasy Gracers, all of whom have blocked me wisely. Some of you will know who it is that is in the thumbnail there. But for those of you who don't, let me introduce you to this sorry group of spiritual hooligans who are out almost every night preaching the false but ear-tickling gospel according to personal sacrifice-free, easy believism. Let me give you a heads up for those of you who haven't had the misfortune of meeting them yet. Let me introduce them to you right here. Stand by. Yeah, this is the sorry group that I mentioned. And again, if you follow my channel, you probably are familiar with who they are, but not everybody, again, has had the misfortune of running into these notorious greasy gracers who are constantly getting thrown off of YouTube and then inventing a new channel. And I wish people would stop reporting them. We need these false witnesses of Christ out here who are so easily identifiable as Christian counterfeits. There's a lot of greasy gracers, for example, Jesse Martinez of Bible Line, who are a lot more competent at preaching the false but ear-scratching gospel according to Greasy Grace. Those are the real problems that Jesse Martinez, but people like this who are such obvious false brothers, obvious pious frauds, we want these people out here who can make it pretty clear that Christianity and this false doctrine are completely incompatible. We're talking about Greasy Gracers here. Praise I Am. That's the sock puppet Tom Holweg hides behind. And these are his sidekicks, Olive Macarios and the Dud over here. They all hide cowardly behind sock puppets, which they don't want to own their words. They're mischief makers. They're absolute pious frauds. And barring a miracle that would cause the Apostle Paul's jaw to hit the floor, these people are indeed going to be swimming in that lake of fire that you see in the thumbnail. And not just them. I mean, I could have picked several others. Jack Smack, Honorato Diamante, Eternally Saved Through Christ. That's another sock puppet somebody hides behind. Unfortunately, YouTube is lousy with these uncredentialed preaching quacks who are out here, again, telling you that all you need to do to get through the pearly gates is believe the right warm fuzzies about Jesus. Let me put this down here. You've spent enough time with them for the evening, I think. But there is, again, like I said, a very clear passage in Matthew chapter 25, the parable of the sheep and the goats. And again, I don't know why I haven't brought this up sooner, but nothing really discredits free grace Greasy grace, this idea that you're going to go to heaven simply because you choose to believe what the guards of the empty tomb believed, and you don't have to do anything else because that would be a work, right? Uh, Nothing. I mean, there's probably no clearer passage that discredits this doctrine of demons known as free grace than Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 through 46. And I want to go through that familiar passage with you as quickly as I can to show you exactly what I'm talking about. And you'll see for yourself. I mean, you simply cannot reconcile greasy grace with this parable. Jesus is speaking quite clearly about Judgment Day. Matthew 25, verses 31 through 46, is a parable about Judgment Day. The righteous, they're the sheep, the ones who actually follow him, not believe in him, but the ones who follow him. And the unrighteous are the goats. They're the ones going into eternal damnation. They're the ones who have earned their damnation. Let's have a look at that passage. Again, it's familiar to a lot of you. But I want you, as we're going through this, see if you could possibly reconcile the doctrine according to greasy grace. Again, this idea that I'm going to heaven simply because I chose to believe on Jesus, whatever that might mean. Believe again in this series that I'm doing, Believe the Gospel, my arse. I have shown why that is a very wherever we see that verb believe, especially in John chapters 3 and 6, that is a very dubious translating choice. It really should be saying commit to. And again, if you haven't seen any of that series I've been doing this year, Believe the Gospel, my arse, I make a very powerful case for why the translation choices of Augustinian monergists, which to this day are in our English New Testaments, they really should be taken with a big grain of salt. Okay. And probably, again, there is no clearer passage which really emphasizes everything I've said in that 5-part series so far. Then this passage, the famous passage, the parable of the sheep and the goats, the Judgment Day parable that Jesus tells just before going to his own crucifixion. So let's have another look at it. You'll see what I mean. Stand by. I apologize for all the blinking you're seeing. It's not your computer, it's mine. It's the Zoom program. But for some reason, every 15, 20 seconds, I'm seeing a blinking here. I don't know what's going on with that. I'll have to figure it out at some point. This is that famous passage I'm talking about. And let's go back to the top here. Thank you. The fate of the sheep and the goats. Very famous parable. Most of you are familiar with this. Matthew 25, verses 31 through 46. And again, as we're going through this, and it won't take very long, but as we're going through this, I want you to see if you can detect a certain theme and how this might be problematic for these greasy gracers like the pod crew and the rest of the preaching quacks like Jack Smack and Honorato Diamante, all these uncredentialed, unregenerate, and totally unteachable pious frauds who are out here sowing tares on YouTube, telling you that you're going to get to heaven simply by believing the right warm fuzzies about Jesus. Doesn't matter what you do. In fact, you can live like the devil. Well, try and reconcile that demonic doctrine with this parable here. All right, let's go through it quickly. Starting from 31. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory. We're using the New Revised Standard Version here, the updated edition, because there is no need to use an archaic, Calvinist-hearted version like the King James Version. Honestly, we don't need to affect some sort of a pious air by using a 400-year-old translation, which is deeply flawed. Okay. All English translations have problems with bias, but at least this one here is understandable. This is updated in 2021, so we're dealing with relatively modern English here, okay? Once again, verse 31 sets the scene. It's telling you this is the second coming of Christ, when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him. Then he will sit on the throne of his glory. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will put the sheep at his right hand and the goats at the left. Now, some people I have heard claim this is a parable about nations, not about people. No. For one thing, nations don't have an afterlife. Nations can't be thrown into eternal fire, okay, or go off to eternal righteousness. We're not talking about nations. So it says, and he will separate people one from another in verse 32. And that's why I have people highlighted. Okay. So we're talking about individuals here. We're not talking about nations. Verses 34 through 36. Then the king will say to those at his right hand, the righteous people, come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me. You know what I don't see here? I was in the Bible, and you believed me. Does anybody see anything about belief here? How about you, the dud? Do you see anything in this passage here talking about credence, about belief? Jack Smack, you preaching quack. Where does it say anything here about the righteous believing something, believing the gospel? Do you even see the word gospel here? Do you see the verb believe? I don't. Moving on. 37 and 36, or 38, I should correct that here. Let's put my glasses back on. That would help. Okay, verse 37. Then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? And when was it that we saw that you were a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? When was it that we saw you sick or in prison and visited you? And the king will answer them, truly, I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did it to me. You didn't believe it. You did it. That's why you're righteous, because you did it. You worked. You did something. You didn't believe something. You did something. Are you understanding that, dud? Are you understanding that praise? I don't think you are. I don't think you want to, but you will at one point. Now we're talking about the goats here. Then he will say to those at his left hand, you who are cursed, depart from me into the eternal fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. Do we understand here? We're not talking about works, folks. We're not talking about rewards for works. We're talking about payback, eternal. You got a choice. On the right hand, there's one thing. On the left hand is here, the goats. And this This left hand, that's where the pod crew is going to be. Dude, Olive, yeah, Praise, you're on the left hand of this group. You're on the king's left side. You know what that means? You who are accursed, depart from me into the eternal fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no food. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not welcome me. Naked, and you did not give me clothing. Sick, and in prison, and you did not visit me. You see the verbs I have highlighted here in dark? I have emboldened. Gave, welcome, visit. You see the verb believe? Let me put this down here. Did you see the verb believe anywhere there? No. You saw a gave. You saw a visit. You saw a welcome. These are works. These are actions. And you know what? Jesus is not talking about extra rewards here in the parable of the sheep and the goats. He's talking about your afterlife. One of two options: eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels, or the joy of your Lord. And what is the criteria for one or the other? It's what you did, which is what he said very clearly in John 5:29. He says that in Matthew 16:27, in Revelation 20:12-13, which is another version of this, the great white throne judgment. It's based on what you did, not on what you believe, not what warm and fuzzy thoughts you had about Jesus at one time. How stupid do you want to be? How much clearer would you like Jesus to talk about this? The parable of the sheep and the goats is about as clear as it gets. This is the criteria for being righteous or unrighteous. It's what you did. You won't see a thing said here about anybody's belief system. Stand by. Coming to the last three verses here. Then they also will answer, that is, the goats, Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or naked or sick or in prison and did not take care of you? Then he will answer them, truly, I tell you, just as you did not do it to one of the least of these, you did not do it to me. And that's why you're accursed. You did not do it. It's not, again, where do you see belief in this? Have you, since we started, go back if you need to. Go back to verse 31 if you need to. Do you see anything about belief here? No, he's talking about judgment day. And you're being chosen for one, punishment or reward. Last verse here. And these wicked goats will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous into eternal life. You see anything about rewards? Oh, the righteous, they're going to get extra rewards. But that's not what made them righteous. What really made them righteous was that they suspended disbelief about a bunch of stories of miracles. That's what actually made them righteous. They chose to suspend disbelief about some incredible stories from antiquity involving lots of miraculous things, like me coming back from the dead. No, that's not what Jesus said. He says they're going to be judged on the basis of what they did. The sheep are those who follow his example. They're the ones who look after the poor, the needy, who took care of people who needed help. They're the ones who visited those in prison. who fed the hungry, who clothed the naked. They're the ones who actually reflected their master by what they did. And you unrighteous goats, you think you're going to share in the joy of your Lord because you chose to suspend disbelief about miracle stories? You are deluded. You're drunk on false religion. And what's going to sober you up finally is when you get thrown into those everlasting flames, everlasting punishment. That's where you're headed. And with that, I'll stop before I start preaching. Okay, Believe the Gospel in My Arse, Part 6. We'll look at the first century documents. We'll be talking about Josephus, Philo, Appian, and we'll see how this word that got mistranslated, believe, by Augustinian monarchists should have been and was, in fact, in other places in first century documents, was translated commit to, deposit to, transfer authority to, okay? Which is what really the gospel is talking about, transferring authority to. But here again, this parable of the sheep and the goats, it's pretty clear, folks. You don't become a sheep simply by suspending disbelief. You actually have to follow the master's examples, and that involves works. Yeah, just not works of the Torah. You see, works of the Torah and actual actions, they're two different things. Yeah, that's why Paul always said he distinguished between the two by saying one was good works. Yeah, there was a certain adjective he used so you wouldn't confuse one with the other. That's another video. I don't want to make this a half hour long or 45 minutes long. It's probably going to be a half hour already. Till next time, till we do Believe the Gospel in My Arse, Part 6. Signing off here from the Boogie Down Bronx. Have a good night, everyone. Bye-bye.